Come on, baby. Come on, try it out. 'Cause I try to be your sweet love.
Hey, George.
Hey, Diva. Hello, everyone at the track.
Today we're going to talk about being a female solo hiker. Tell us your experience.
It's great, but it sucks too. I didn't start out as a female solo hiker. I started hiking with my dad, of course, so there was an adjustment period whenever he hopped off to learn what it was like without him. And something I really didn't think was going to be an issue for me was people trying to pink blaze. Pink blazing is when somebody purposefully alters their plans or their pace to try and match that of somebody that they might be romantically interested in, or just anybody of the opposite sex that they just would like to get to know better. And from what I've interpreted before coming on trail, it was kind of a derogatory term, but I can see how there are some positives to it as well. My experience, however, has not been the greatest. Once my dad hopped off trail, actually minutes after he hopped off, there was somebody staying at the hostel I was in at Damascus who instantly said, "You want to go up in the mountains? You want to do fun stuff?" And I said, "Yeah," and I didn't realize that was to go hiking, because then they tried to follow me for the next 4 or 5 days. Even when you say, I really like my alone time, being out here. So I really didn't think it was a thing, but being around my dad, I guess that was a little more intimidating for men to approach me in such a way. Ever since leaving, my dad truly has been every week or so somebody else coming up and trying to keep pace with me for a couple days, even though it's clearly not their pace, whether I'm moving faster or slower. And goodness, Devil's Backbone Brewery, whenever we got there, people drinking, that really shows true colors. And you'll just have people that say they want to spend time with you without actually confessing their true intentions in anything. So it's really complicated whenever you because I'm out here just trying to be me, have a great time, make some friends, and that's not everybody else's intention.
So how do you set boundaries, George?
Oh goodness, you say it right out, right? Exactly what's going on. I'll ask somebody straight up, so what are you trying to get? You really just need some hiking company? You just looking for romantic interest? Because that's not happening. I'm not out here for that. I'm out here to make friends, but I'm not out here to make friends. And maybe that sounds kind of, I don't know. For me, I just have to say right out right, please don't try and be out here looking for anything more than a hiking friendship. I'm not out here looking for love, and a lot of people, I actually think, may not admit it to themselves, but they are looking for something other than just a hiking experience, whether it be friendship or something else. And I know that that's not what I'm looking for. So for me, setting boundaries is simply stating just that.
Clear to your values and clear to what you're saying. What you're saying is what you mean.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, George. Thanks for sharing that too.
Diva, thank you.
This is Rosie. Hi, Rosie. And Rosie, would you please care to share your experience being a female solo hiker?
Sure. Being a female solo hiker actually has its advantages and has its disadvantages. Advantages is you actually don't have to worry about anybody else other than yourself. As the caring species, we look after everybody and we're given the freedom to just care for ourselves for 6 months. The disadvantages are that you can get into some pretty sticky situations that you need to know how to get out of. I personally had a bad experience in a hostel and it made me feel vulnerable. But I got myself back on the trail again. I went to it was like a hostel, but it was somebody's home. And the guy had been drinking. He was in a remote farmhouse and there was only me and another chick there, and I didn't have any idea exactly where I was. Anyway, the guy continued to drink, and he was really, really weird. I locked the bunk room door. I was the only one inside the house, which was filthy dirty and falling down. I hadn't asked where the bathroom was in the middle of the night. Got up, went outside, came back, and I can't remember if I had relocked the bunk room door. I saw him at about 2 o'clock in the morning with a flashlight, walking around the property, inside the house and outside the house with a flashlight. As you can see, I wear glasses. When I awoke in the morning, my glasses were completely gone, and it freaked me out. I do believe that he had them and wanted me to stay and look for them, which I didn't do. I used common sense and said, to myself, to not stay in a situation where I had no control over anything. So it sent me off the trail for 6 days. He had also said that, whether he was joking or not, but he also said that he'd killed his wife and buried her out in the back garden. And he was also bragging that he had the young guy's resupply box that was murdered on the trail. I'd spoken to friends, and they were trying up and down the Appalachian Trail to find out where I was, which we couldn't do because I didn't know where I was. But like they say, never quit on a bad day. So I took some time and thought about it and came back on the trail, which I'm very glad I did.
Wow. I'm so sorry that happened, Rosie.
Yeah, that's okay. It just makes us grow as women to be able to care and look after ourselves and be strong.
Mm-hmm. So that's the lesson that you learned from that situation?
Yeah, and to make sure that you make clear decisions. I probably should have read the reviews on that hostel, which were all bad. I didn't. I was tired, and I allowed all my common sense to fail me. So now I'm hyper alert, particularly with stealth camping and whatnot. If I stealth camp, then I camp with other people. There's been a couple of incidences on the trail where women have been threatened. So even though I do believe that it's extremely safe on the trail, because you are alone, and you are vulnerable, very vulnerable to weird people. So it's always a smart move to make sure that you're either in a group, behind a group. Even if you want to be by yourself, just know that you've got other people either in front of you or behind you. And then that way effectively that you are safe. If anything happens, you've got the ones following up behind and the ones in front that know that you're behind. So I would recommend it to all females to attempt a long hike. Doesn't have to be the Appalachian Trail, just an 8-week hike. It is very good for women to step out of that comfort zone of being cared for by a man or a partner. That's probably one of the biggest journeys for me, was that I wanted to show my grandchildren to never ever be scared to step outside what is comfortable to you. So, and onward journey to Maine now. So I'll see what that adventure holds for me.
Well, thank you, Rosie. That was wonderful, and thanks for sharing
No
your
problem.
experience. So this is Swandive, and she's actually a female solo sobo hiker, right?
So I started July 7th and hiked by myself for the first 300 miles. I met a few people here and there, and I've just enjoyed hiking with people, without people, doing my own thing. And I remember my first night sleeping by myself, and there's nobody around. I was at one of those tent sites, but it wasn't a lean-to, and there was like a dead fish by the water, and I was freaking out because I thought there was gonna be a bear, but there wasn't. But then I just went swimming and watched the beautiful sunset and had an awesome night. So, I mean, it always ends up really, really great.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah, so not being scared, being a solo female hiker definitely has given me so much strength and courage just being out here and learning so much about myself.
That's awesome. Have you run into any issues with people at all so far in this 500 and...
Yeah, there's been like one kind of not awesome situation I was in. There was like this creepy guy who, obviously we're all hiking the same way. He wasn't hiking all the way to Georgia. He was just hiking a section, and he was staying really close to me and like asking like too many questions that made me uncomfortable, saying uncomfortable things. So I kept hiking, and I get to the campsite where I was going to camp, and then I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to just push on. I'm not going to camp here. And he's like, oh, yeah, me too. So he pushed on to the next campsite with me. And then I was going to camp there, and he was like, I think we were at like 18 miles that day, and it was in the 100-mile wilderness, and I had just gotten started, so I was pretty tired. So he sets up his whole camp. I'm still super uncomfortable. And so I wait for him to set up his whole camp, and then I said, see ya, I'm gonna hike on. And so I just did another like 6 miles and found a blue blaze and camped, stealth camping off site.
Wow.
Never saw him again. Outran him. So it took like 4 days to like every day I was doing big miles to like outrun this guy. But he wasn't like harmful in like a scary way. I was just like made me uncomfortable going with my gut. So I really learned to go with my gut out here. Like whether it's, you know, the weather's going to turn bad or, you know, finding, you know, certain people, I just go with my gut, you know. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Swandive,
Yeah,
for
no
sharing that. It
problem.
sounds like you managed that situation awesomely.
Totally.
Set a boundary, and that was space.
Heck yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about my experience being a female solo hiker. So my experience, I started alone, and I didn't have anyone in the beginning. And a lot of people were concerned, and I understand why they were concerned because, you know, first of all, the biggest concern I think was that I had zero experience. I don't really recommend having zero experience, but I just know myself, and this experience was meant to be, you know, like diving in. So I haven't had an experience where I feel super uncomfortable, and when I do, I normally get out of it, and then I explain it to someone that I feel safe with. I had to do that. I had to do that a couple miles back, but I'm pretty hypervigilant, and I really have zero tolerance for people making me feel uncomfortable because I'm a female. And when I mean zero tolerance, I mean you're going to hear about it. And I tend to be more on the aggressive side when it comes to setting boundaries. I'm very firm too. And I think that those qualities make being a female solo through hiker very necessary in order to feel safe. And not to say that other people don't try. I just think that women tend to be shaped to say certain things that are unclear, such as I kind of feel uncomfortable, as opposed to I feel uncomfortable. There's really no kind of involved. Things like maybe you should, and I think the tone definitely has a lot to do with it too. So I think that my experience has been a lot different. No one has pink blazed me, probably because I would be like, don't touch me, from the get-go. I also don't hug people, so there's no like mixed messages going on, and it doesn't really matter, you know, if people do choose to hug. It's not like an open invitation to pink blaze. But you know, people read things differently. But yeah, I think those are some tips for females. Direct, definitely direct. As in, say what you mean. There's no kind ofs or justs or maybes. There's, this is it, and this is my boundary, and if people don't respect it, then you gotta plan a course of action behind, like, what are you gonna do if someone doesn't respect your boundaries? Luckily, people have respected my boundaries, so that's that. There are legitimately bugs right in my face. Ugh, so sick of these gnats. Direct, clear, and be true to your values. Oh, the other thing to mention is that I've had a lot of different families, so I think that's one of the benefits is hiking with multiple different people. And yeah, it's I know that for a fact, like, I'm alone out here, as in certain people are gonna choose to stay or choose to go, and that's just how it is. And I also choose to stay or choose to go, so it's more of a loose things going on. But anyways, I've had 3 tramways just based on hiking pace, and I wanted to take zeros during the heat wave. That split people up, but you know, if the trail brings us back together, it brings us back together. But you just meet other people, and then if you feel comfortable around them, you hike with them, and if you don't, you move on. So there you go. The experience of being a female solo hiker. And now I'm gonna keep walking, one foot in front of the other.